What if everything you believe about success, wealth, and power is actually the biggest trap of your life? We live in a culture that tells you to fake it till you make it, to project an image of success at all costs. But what if the real path to a meaningful life isn't about climbing higher, but about getting on your knees in the dirt? This isn't a story about making more money. It's about a counterintuitive secret that transforms arrogance into the purest form of power authenticity. Think about it for a second. The pressure to be perfect, the fear of being exposed, the emptiness that follows a life lived for others. That's the silent pain behind so many successful facades. Now, imagine that pressure magnified by billions of dollars and a last name that's a global brand. That was the life of Joseph Morris, an heir who had everything and, at the same time, had absolutely nothing. After a public scandal fallout nearly destroyed his family, he was given a punishment no one saw coming that would force him to confront the raw, ugly truth about himself. The solution for his redemption wasn't found in a luxury rehab clinic, or on a soul-searching trip through Europe. The solution was in the most unlikely of places, working as a humble gardener on his own family's estate. And the person destined to teach him the most important lesson of his life wasn't a guru or a CEO, but the cook's daughter, a young woman who saw right through his arrogance and wasn't the least bit impressed by his money. In this journey, you won't just watch a story, you will discover the key to true transformation. A map that will guide you from arrogance to authenticity and from riches to roots. Prepared to witness a spoiled heir redemption unfold in a way no one could have predicted, proving that sometimes you have to lose everything to finally find yourself. Well, let's talk about hitting rock bottom, shall we? For some, it's a financial crisis, for others, a personal failure. But for Joseph Morris, it was a full-blown front-page implosion. The kind of public scandal fallout that makes even the most shameless gossip columnists blush. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a symphony of terrible decisions, broadcast in high definition for the entire world to see. And his father, a man who built an empire from scratch, saw his life's work, his very name, being dragged through the mud. This wasn't just about disappointment, it was about the potential crumbling of a dynasty. You see, a father's legacy isn't just about the money he leaves behind. It's about the values, the name, the respect. When that's threatened, a man of power does not sit idly by his axe. In this case, the response wasn't a press conference or a hefty donation to charity. It was something far more elemental. The decision was made. The path to a spoiled heir redemption wouldn't be found in a boardroom, but in the soil. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort to force a legacy redefined, not by acquiring more, but by stripping everything away. Imagine the scene. Joseph, still nursing a headache from the scandal's aftershocks, is summoned to his father's penthouse officia room that usually signified a new car or an increased allowance. But the air was different this time. "You're going to the estate," his father said, his voice as cold and hard as the marble floor. "You'll work as a gardener." I'm sure Joseph thought it was a joke, a poorly timed bit of paternal humor, but the look in his father's eyes told him this was no laughing matter. The era of the billionaire's son humbled was about to begin, whether he liked it or not. Why a gardener, you ask? It's a brilliant move, really. It's a powerful lesson in humility through hardship. You can't bribe a seed to grow faster. You can't intimidate a weed into submission. The earth doesn't care about your last name or your bank account. It demands patience, effort, and respect, three things Joseph Morris knew absolutely nothing about. This wasn't a punishment designed to inflict pain, but a lesson designed to build character from the ground up. It was a forced journey from riches to roots, and so, it began. The first step on a long, unwilling road from arrogance to authenticity. Stripped of his designer watches, his high-limit credit cards, and the keys to his sports car, Joseph was driven away from the glittering city skyline he called his playground. He was headed toward a quiet, sprawling estate he'd only ever visited for lavish parties. He didn't know it yet, but he was being sent to the one place that could possibly save him from himself. The silence in the car was deafening, filled only with his own resentment and the unspoken truth his old life was over. You can't even imagine the rage. It's one thing to be reprimanded, but it's another entirely to have your entire existence flipped upside down. Joseph Morris wasn't just angry, he was a walking storm of indignation. Every fiber of his being screamed against the injustice of it all. Trading a penthouse for a small cottage on the estate grounds, a luxury vehicle for a rusty wheelbarrow. It felt like a cruel joke. This initial brutal phase wasn't a gardener transformation, it was a daily torture, a raw, gritty punishment that felt less like a lesson and more like a prison sentence. He was forced to bite the bullet, but oh how he hated the taste. His first few days were a masterclass in rebellion. He'd show up late, deliberately use the wrong tools, and treat the priceless ornamental shrubs with the same care he'd give to a wad of used gum. But the head groundskeeper, a man with hands like weathered leather and a gaze that missed nothing, was his father's loyal soldier. Discipline was swift and non-negotiable. For every minute Joseph was late, he stayed 10 minutes later. For every tool he broke accidentally, he spent an hour cleaning the entire shed. This was his new reality, a crash course in cause and effect. The journey from arrogance to authenticity had begun, and its first steps were paved with mud and resentment. Think about it, a young man whose biggest problem a week ago was which European city to jet off to for the weekend was now on his hands and knees pulling weeds under a blistering sun. The shift is so monumental, it's almost comical. He felt the universe was mocking him, stripping him of his identity layer by painful layer. This forced humility through hardship was a bitter pill to swallow. He wasn't just losing his luxuries, he was losing his sense of self, the only one he'd ever known. And in its place, there was just an aching back, blistered hands, and the infuriating chirping of birds. This stage of any great change is always the ugliest. It's the resistance, the why me phase. It's when you fight the lesson instead of learning. Joseph saw the dirt as his enemy, the discipline as his cage. He hadn't yet realized they were his tools for liberation. This is a trap many of us fall into. When faced with a challenge meant to help us grow, we see it only as an obstacle. We resent the very thing that has the power to set us free. The initial steps of the billionaire's son humbled were filled with fury, not understanding. He'd collapse into his simple bed each night, exhausted and fuming, plotting his escape or fantasizing about the moment he could reclaim his life. The world of status and power felt a million miles away, a dream he was starting to forget the details of. Little did he know, this grueling routine, this stripping away of the knots in shore was the necessary fire to burn away the dross. He was a long way from a spoiled heir redemption, but the foundation, built on dirt and sweat, was being laid, one agonizing day at a time. Just when Joseph thought his situation couldn't get any more infuriating, it did. And it came in the form of a person, not a task. Enter Sophia Wilson. She wasn't part of the grounds crew, she was the cook's daughter, home for the summer from her university studies in horticulture, of all things. Her return to the estate was a yearly ritual, but this year, she walked into the middle of the Joseph Morris experiment. Their first meeting wasn't a meet-cute, it was a collision. He, dripping with entitled sweat and a foul mood, nearly ran her over with his wheelbarrow, and she, holding a tray of fresh lemonade for the staff, didn't so much as flinch. The clash was immediate and palpable. He saw a mere employee's daughter, someone who should be intimidated by his presence. She saw something else entirely a cliché, a walking, pouting stereotype of a billionaire's son humbled by circumstances, not by choice. This, right here, was the cook's daughter twist. He expected deference, or at least a flicker of recognition of who he was. Instead, he got a raised eyebrow and a dry comment about watching where he was going. The audacity. It was a social dynamic he had never encountered before. He tried to pull rank, of course. Don't you know who I am? That old, tired line that had always worked before. Sophia simply took a sip of the lemonade she was carrying, looked him up and down, and said, "I know exactly who you are. You're the new gardener and you're trampling the hydrangeas." The words, spoken so calmly, cut deeper than any insult. They didn't just dismiss his past status, they completely ignored it. For the first time, Joseph was being defined not by his family name, but by his present, dirt-covered reality. This initial friction is crucial. It's the spark that lights the fuse of transformation. Think of it like sandpaper. Joseph was a block of rough, unrefined wood, and Sophia was the grit that would, against his will, begin to smooth his jagged edges. He was annoyed, yes, but he was also intrigued. No one had ever dared to be so unimpressed by him. This dynamic set the stage for a new kind of challenge, one that wasn't about physical labor but about ego and perception. The journey from riches to roots suddenly had an unexpected and very human complication. Their early interactions were a series of minor skirmishes. He'd make a sarcastic comment about her playing in the dirt with her college degree, and she'd retort with a scientifically accurate reason why his gardening technique was laughably wrong. It was a battle of his unearned arrogance against her earned knowledge. He was completely outmatched, and he knew it. This wasn't just about gardening anymore, it was about a fundamental challenge to his worldview. And Sophia Wilson was the catalyst. What truly got under Joseph's skin wasn't just Sophia's lack of deference, it was her unshakable confidence. It wasn't loud or boastful, it was a quiet, solid certainty that emanated from her. She was sharp, her mind as cultivated as the gardens she loved. While he had been learning how to spend money, she had been learning about ecosystems, about life cycles, about the patient, intricate work of nurturing growth. Her intelligence wasn't a weapon she wielded, but a lens through which she saw the world. And through that lens, his status was meaningless. This was the core of love beyond status. Even before romance was a whisper of a possibility, she was grounded, quite literally. Her connection to the earth was something he couldn't comprehend. For him, the land was just property, a backdrop for his life of excess. For Sophia, it was a source of wisdom, a living, breathing entity. She could tell you the history of a century-old oak tree just by looking at it, or predict the rain by the scent of the air. This profound connection made his world of brands, parties, and influence seem laughably superficial. He was a kite with its string cut, and she had roots that ran deep into the earth. Let's be real. People like Joseph are used to a certain reaction, awe, envy, desire. These were the currencies of his social world. Sophia offered none of them. She wasn't impressed by his family's wealth or intimidated by his family's power. It was like trying to impress a mountain with a photograph of a skyscraper. The mountain simply doesn't care. Her indifference was a mirror, forcing him to see how little substance he had without the trappings of his name. The journey from arrogance to authenticity required him to see himself through her eyes. This kind of groundedness is a superpower in today's world. It's the ability to know your own worth, independent of external validation. Think of people you truly admire. Are they the ones who are loudest about their accomplishments, or the ones who are quietly confident in their skills and values? Sophia embodied the latter. She was proof that you don't need a billion-dollar legacy to have a rich life. Her approach to life was one of the first true lessons from the earth he would receive, and it came from her, not the soil. So, he watched her. He'd see her talking to the other staff with genuine warmth and respect. He'd see the passion in her eyes when she explained the science behind composting. She was whole and content in a way he had never been, even when he supposedly had everything. This wasn't a simple cook's daughter twist in a drama, it was the introduction of a completely new philosophy of life, one that would slowly begin to dismantle his own. The universe has a funny way of pushing you exactly where you need to go, kicking and screaming the whole way. In a move that felt like a cosmic prank too, Joseph, the head groundskeeper, seeing Sophia's expertise, officially assigned her to be his mentor. Her task, to actually teach him how to be a gardener, not just a brute who pulled weeds. The heir who once had private tutors from Oxford was now the reluctant student of the cook's daughter. The irony was so thick, you could cut it with a trowel. Sophia, for her part, was not thrilled. Teaching this entitled brat felt like a waste of her precious summer. But she also had a deep-seated respect for the land and couldn't bear to watch him butcher it any longer. So, she agreed, but on her terms. Lesson 1, she said on their first official session, holding up a simple tomato seedling. This has more purpose and integrity than a sports car. It feeds people. It creates life. What does your car do? This wasn't just a gardening lesson, it was a direct shot at his entire value system. Every lesson was a challenge to his shallow worldview, he thought. In terms of cost and image, she thought. In terms of growth and symbiosis. He'd complain about the dirt under his fingernails, and she'd explain the complex universe of microorganisms living in that dirt, essential for all life. She transformed his gardener transformation from a punishment into a philosophical She wasn't just teaching him how to plant a seed, she was planting seeds of doubt in his long-held beliefs about what it meant to be successful and important. This is a powerful method for anyone looking to grow. Find a teacher who doesn't just show you how, but forces you to ask why. Reading a book like Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer can have a similar effect, connecting you to the idea that the land is a teacher, not a commodity. Sophia was Joseph's living embodiment of that book. She was constantly reframing his perspective, forcing a transition from entitled to empathetic by showing him a world that didn't revolve around him. He resisted, of course. He'd scoff and make cynical jokes. But her logic was undeniable, and her passion was infectious. She spoke of the lessons from the earth, not as a hippie cliché, but as a scientific and spiritual truth. He came to her expecting to learn about shovels and hoses, but he was getting a crash course in humility, patience, and interconnectedness. His worldview, once a fortress of arrogance, was starting to show cracks. Change is never a lightning bolt moment. It's not a switch that gets flipped. It's a slow, grueling process, often invisible to the person experiencing it. For Joseph Maurice, the change was happening in the space between the blisters forming on his hands and the sweat dripping down his back. It was forged in frustration. He'd plant a row of seeds too deep and nothing would sprout. He'd prune a rosebush the wrong way, killing its future blooms. Each mistake was a fresh wave of humiliation, especially under Sophia's knowing, patient gaze. But something funny happens when you fail repeatedly at something so fundamental. You have two choices: you can quit, or you can get humble. For weeks, Joseph was tempted by the former. But the thought of proving Sophia and his father right was incredibly more painful than the failure itself. So, he started to listen, he started to watch, he started to ask questions, not with a sarcastic sneer, but with a genuine, grudging curiosity. This was the true beginning of humility through hardship. The physical toll was immense, but it was also cleansing. The mindless, exhausting labor quieted the noise in his head. There was no room for plotting revenge or lamenting his lost life when his entire body was screaming for rest. He was too tired to be arrogant. This is a secret that monks and soldiers have known for centuries. True clarity often comes from pushing the body to its limit. His sweat was washing away more than just dirt. It was washing away the toxic residue of his former life. This was the essence of his gardener transformation. He started to notice little things. The satisfaction of seeing the first tiny green shoots emerge from a seed he had planted. The simple pleasure of a cool breeze after hours in the sun. The taste of a strawberry, picked straight from the vine, warm and sweet in a way no store-bought fruit ever could be. These weren't grand epiphanies, but small, quiet moments of connection. He was, without realizing it, beginning his journey from riches to roots, finding value in things that had no price tag. Sophia saw it, even if he didn't. She noticed he stopped complaining as much. She saw him gently tending to the seedlings he had once mocked. He was still clumsy, still prone to fits of frustration, but there was a shift. The hard shell of the spoiled air was beginning to crack, and something new, something softer and more authentic, was starting to grow underneath. The process was painful and messy, but it was happening. It's a funny thing about kindness. When you're used to a world of transactions, where every interaction has an angle, genuine, no-strings-attached kindness can be the most disarming force on the planet. Sophia wasn't just his teacher, she started to become, well, kind to him. After a particularly grueling day, she'd leave a cold bottle of water for him on a bench. When he successfully cultivated his first row of carrots, she gave him a small, genuine smile of approval that felt more valuable than any sports car he'd ever owned. This kindness began to erode his defenses in a way that discipline and hard labor never could. He was prepared for a fight, for condescension, for "I told you so." He was not prepared for compassion. Her wisdom, once a source of irritation, now started to sound like well, wisdom. She'd talk about how a garden teaches you that you can't rush things, that some things just take time. He'd roll his eyes, but later that night, the words would echo in his mind. And had realized she wasn't just talking about plants. The lessons from the earth were becoming lessons about life. He would never admit it, of course. His pride was still a formidable fortress. As she pointed out his progress, he'd grunt and change the subject. If she offered a word of encouragement, he'd pretend not to hear it, but inwardly her words were landing. He was a ship that had been sailing under a flag of arrogance for so long, and her kindness was a gentle, persistent wind, slowly turning him in a new direction. The transformation from entitled to empathetic was happening on a subconscious level. This is a powerful reminder for all of us. You can't argue someone into changing their mind, but you can often love them into it. Kindness is the ultimate Trojan horse. It bypasses our ego, our defenses, and speaks directly to the part of us that yearns for connection. Sophia's gentle persistence was rewriting Joseph's internal programming. He had always associated strength with dominance and power, but she was showing him a different kind of strength rooted in patience, understanding, and empathy. He started to see her not just as the cook's daughter or his annoying mentor, but as Sophia, a person. He'd catch himself watching the way her eyes lit up when she talked about a rare flower, or the focused determination on her face as she worked. He was beginning to see the world and the people in it with new eyes. Her influence was becoming the central force in his spoiled heir redemption, and he was more terrified of that than any amount of hard work. There comes a point in any meaningful journey where the work stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a calling. Joseph didn't wake up one day and declare his love for gardening, but the shift was undeniable. The resistance faded, replaced by a quiet rhythm. Waking up with the sun, the feel of the cool morning air, the earthy smell of the soil, these things became the new architecture of his days. He started to find a strange, unexpected joy in the simplicity of it all. This was the heart of the healing through simplicity that he so desperately needed. He discovered the profound satisfaction of creation. To take a barren patch of earth and, with his own two hands, coax life from it was a feeling of accomplishment that dwarfed anything he had ever felt before. Closing a business deal was abstract, a number on a screen, but harvesting a basket of perfect, ripe tomatoes that was real, that was tangible. He was learning the language of the land, and it was a language of peace. The gardener transformation was no longer a punishment, it was becoming his identity. And then there was her company. The quiet conversations that started to flow between them were as vital as the sun and rain. They moved past the teacher-student dynamic into something more. They would work in comfortable silence for long stretches. The only sounds, the snipping of shears and the buzzing of bees. He found that he didn't need to perform for her. He didn't need to be the witty, charming heir. He could just be Joseph, the guy who still wasn't great at identifying weeds, but was getting better. Their shared labor became a form of communication. Working side by side, they developed an easy rapport. He'd ask a question, and her answer would branch into a story about her grandmother's garden, or a fascinating fact about plant biology. He learned more about her and about himself in those quiet moments than in all the loud, crowded parties of his past. He was discovering love beyond status, finding a connection with a person, not a pedigree. The joy was twofold. It was the joy of connecting with the earth, the from riches to roots journey, reaching a beautiful new stage. But it was also the joy of connecting with another soul. Her presence transformed the garden from a place of labor into a sanctuary. He started looking forward to his days, not with the dread of a prisoner, but with the quiet anticipation of someone who has found a place where they belong. The walls he had built so high around himself started to come down, not with a crash, but brick by brick. The quiet conversations blossomed. He found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone about the suffocating pressure of his family, named the emptiness of his social life. He wasn't looking for sympathy, he was simply thinking out loud, and she was the first person who seemed to listen without judgment. She, in turn, shared her dreams of opening a community-supported agriculture project, of making sustainable farming accessible to everyone. And then came the laughter. It started as a small chuckle when he tripped over a hose for the 10th time, but soon it grew into genuine, shared laughter over a funny-shaped carrot or a territorial squirrel. Laughter is a bridge between two people, and for Joseph and Sophia it was the bridge that crossed the vast canyon between their two worlds. For the first time in a long time, Joseph's laughter wasn't a performance, it was a reflex. This was a critical step in his path from arrogance to authenticity. The affection between them was like a slow-growing vine, wrapping around them so subtly that they barely noticed it at first. It was in the way he started bringing her a cup of coffee in the morning, just the way she liked it. It was in the way she'd saved the sweetest wild strawberries for him to find. These were small, unspoken gestures, tiny seeds of care being planted. In the garden of their budding relationship, the cook's daughter twist was evolving into a story far more profound than a simple clash of classes. One afternoon, as a light rain forced them to take shelter in the old greenhouse, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and blooming jasmine, the space between them felt charged with a new energy. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the girl who had intimidated him, but a strong, beautiful, brilliant woman who had saved him from himself. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was falling for her. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. This quiet, gentle progression is where the deepest connections are formed. It's not in the grand, dramatic declarations, but in the shared moments of vulnerability and simple joy. It's in the comfortable silences, the inside jokes, the unspoken understanding. Joseph, the billionaire's son, humbled, was discovering a richness he never knew existed, a wealth that had nothing to do with money. He was learning the true meaning of love beyond status, and it was changing everything. Life has a terrible sense of timing, doesn't it? Just as Joseph was standing on the precipice of a profound realization, just as he was gathering the courage to maybe, possibly, do something about this feeling growing in his chest, the world tilted on its axis again. He arrived at the gardens one morning, coffee for two in hand, to find only silence. Sophia wasn't there. Her tools were neatly put away, but the space where her vibrant energy usually filled the air was unnervingly empty. He brushed it off at first. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was running late. But the morning stretched into a long, quiet afternoon, and a knot of anxiety began to tighten in his stomach. He asked the other staff, but they just shrugged, offering vague answers. He went to the kitchen, a place he usually avoided, to ask her mother, the cook. The woman's eyes were redrimmed and filled with a pain that she clearly didn't want to share. She just shook her head and said, "She's gone, Joseph. She had to leave." Gone. The word didn't make sense. Gone. Where? Why? There was no note, no text message, no final conversation, just a void. The suddenness of it was a physical blow. The garden, which had become his sanctuary, suddenly felt vast and hostile again. The colors seemed duller, the birdsong mocking. Her absence was a deafening silence that amplified his own confusion and a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time: helplessness. This was the beginning of the disappearance and discovery chapter of his life. His mind raced through 100 possibilities. Did he do something wrong? Did he say something to offend her? Did his father find out about their growing closeness and send her away? That last thought sent a chill down his spine. The old paranoia, the feeling of being a pawn in his father's games, came rushing back. The progress he had made, the healing, through simplicity, felt fragile, threatened by this sudden, inexplicable mystery. He was left standing alone in the middle of the garden, the place of his transformation, feeling more lost than he did on his very first day. The affection he had just started to acknowledge had turned into a gaping wound. He had been so focused on his own spoiled heir redemption that he had failed to see that Sophia had a life, a world, and perhaps problems of her own, far beyond the bubble of the estate. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. The work in the garden, once a source of peace, became a torturous reminder of her absence. Every plant, every tool, every path held a memory. Joseph went through the motions, his body on autopilot, but his mind was a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Devastation is a powerful catalyst, and in his case, it burned away the last remnants of his old apathy. He couldn't just let this go. He had to know what happened to Sophia Wilson. He started by trying to talk to her mother again, but the cook was a fortress of polite, sorrowful silence. He could see she was hurting, but she was also fiercely protective. This wasn't a secret she was willing to share. This roadblock only fueled his determination. The old Joseph would have given up, would have thrown a tantrum and moved on to the next distraction. But this new man, the one shaped by humility through hardship, was different. He had learned patience. He had learned persistence. His search for answers became a mission, a focal point for his grief and confusion. It was his first real test. Was his transformation genuine? Was this from arrogance to authenticity journey real, or would he crumble at the first sign of real emotional adversity? He started to use the skills he'd learned in his old life, and not for selfish gain, but for this new purpose. He was methodical, observant. He pieced together snippets of overheard conversations among the staff, a worried phone call the cook tried to hide. It was a disappearance and discovery mission driven by a heart he barely knew he had. The easy path would have been to confront his father, to use his power and influence to get the answers. But he knew, instinctively, that this was not the way. This was personal. This was about him and Sophia. Involving his father would taint it, turn it into another transaction, another power play. He had to do this himself. This quest was no longer just about finding her. It was about proving to himself that the man she had helped create was real and capable. He felt like a detective in his own life story, searching for the missing piece that made everything make sense. The pain of her absence was sharp, but it also gave him a clarity he had never had before. His purpose was no longer an abstract concept like redefining a legacy. It was concrete, immediate, and had a name: Sophia. The billionaire's son, humbled, was now a man on a mission, driven by something far more powerful than money or duty. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. It wasn't through clever deduction or a dramatic confrontation, but through an act of simple kindness. He found Sophia's mother, Maria, crying quietly in the pantry late one night. Instead of demanding answers, he simply sat with her, offering a silent presence of support. He spoke about how much Sophia had changed him, how her lessons from the earth were about more than just gardening. He was no longer the entitled heir. He was just a person, worried about someone they both cared for. Seeing his genuine concern, his complete transformation from entitled to empathetic, Maria's defenses finally crumbled. Through tears, she told him everything. Sophia's father, from whom Maria was separated, had been battling a serious illness for years. His condition had taken a sudden, severe turn for the worse. He lived in a different city, hundreds of miles away, and had no one else. Sophia, without a second thought, had packed her bags and rushed to his side to become his full-time caregiver. She hadn't said goodbye because she couldn't bear it, she just had to go. The relief was immense, a wave that washed away the dark paranoia. She hadn't left because of him. She hadn't been sent away. She had left because of love and duty, the very same qualities she had been awakening in him. The cook's daughter twist wasn't a mystery or a betrayal, it was a testament to her character. She was exactly the person he thought she was: selfless, strong, and deeply caring. The discovery part of disappearance and discovery was complete, but relief was quickly followed by a profound sense of empathy. He imagined the weight on her shoulders, caring for a sick parent, the fear and the exhaustion, his own problems. His entire spoiled heir redemption drama suddenly seemed so small, so self-indulgent in comparison. He had been focused on his own growth, his own healing through simplicity, while she was facing a real, raw human crisis. It was a humbling perspective shift. Now, he had a choice. He had his answer. He could go back to his routine, satisfied that she hadn't abandoned him. He could continue his gardener transformation, wait for her to return, and hope things could pick up where they left off. That would be the easy, passive choice. Or he could do something. He could take the lessons he'd learned about purpose and action and apply them. The old Joseph would have sent a check. The new Joseph knew that wasn't enough. The decision crystallized in his mind with absolute clarity. This wasn't a choice anymore, it was a necessity. He went to his father, but not to ask for his old life back. He stood before him, not as the arrogant son or the reluctant gardener, but as a man with a purpose. He explained the situation, the truth about Sophia and her father. He wasn't asking for permission, he was informing him of his plans. He was going to follow her. His father saw the change in him then, more clearly than in all the months of manual labor. This was the legacy redefined he had hoped for, unfolding in a way he never could have orchestrated. The determination in Joseph's eyes was real. He wasn't chasing a girl for a romantic whim, he was going to support a person in their time of need. This was the ultimate test of his journey from arrogance to authenticity. It was time to put his new character into action. He packed a single bag. No designer clothes, no expensive gadgets, just practical things. He took the savings he had earned as actual hard-earned wages from working in the garden and bought a bus ticket. It was a stark contrast to the private jets of his past. This journey wasn't about comfort or status, it was about intent. He wasn't going there to sweep her off her feet or to convince her to come back. He was going simply to help, to cook, to clean, to run errands, to be a shoulder to lean on, to offer support, no strings attached. This is a critical distinction. In any relationship, romantic or otherwise, are you there for what the other person can give you, or are you there for what you can give them? The old Joseph operated on the former. His entire life was a transaction. The new Joseph, the billionaire's son humbled by love and dirt, was learning to operate on the latter. He was driven by a desire to ease her burden, not to add to it with his own emotional needs. As the bus rumbled down the highway, leaving the sprawling estate and his old life behind, he felt a sense of peace had never known. He had a direction, a mission that came from the very core of his being. He wasn't trying to win her back or force a fairy tale ending. He was simply trying to be the kind of man he thought she deserved. The kind of man she had, against all odds, taught him how to be. Finding her wasn't hard. He went to the only hospital in the small, unassuming city and asked for her father's room. When he walked in, the scene stopped him in his tracks. Sophia looked exhausted, a shadow of the vibrant woman from the garden. The room was sterile and smelled of antiseptic, a stark contrast to the world of life and growth they had shared. She was so focused on her father, she didn't even notice him at first. When she finally looked up and saw him standing there, her expression was a mixture of utter shock, confusion, and overwhelming weariness. "Joseph, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice raspy. The old Joseph would have launched into a grand, selfish speech. But this Joseph simply put down his bag and said, "I heard you could use some help. I make a decent cup of coffee now, and I'm surprisingly good at cleaning. Go get some fresh air." I'll stay with him. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't explain his feelings. He just offered practical, unconditional support. And in that moment, Sophia saw it all. This wasn't the spoiled heir she had first met. This wasn't the frustrated boy complaining about dirt under his fingernails. The man standing before her was calm, confident, and empathetic. He had followed her not with a sense of ownership, but with a spirit of service. The depth of his transformation was staggering. It was one thing to see him change in the bubble of the estate, it was another to see him bring that change into the harsh reality of her world. The spoiled heir redemption was complete and standing right in front of her. He kept his word. For the next few days, he became a quiet force of support. He made sure she ate. He talked to the doctors, using his innate confidence not to intimidate, but to advocate for her father's care. He sat with her father for hours, reading to him, even when the man was too weak to respond. He brought a bit of the garden to that sterile room, telling stories of their time together, of the lessons from the earth they had shared. He brought a sense of peace and stability into her chaos. She watched him, her heart aching with a complex mix of gratitude and affection. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, and he hadn't flinched or run away. Instead, he had run toward her. He had traded his world of immense privilege for a seat in a cramped hospital room, simply because she was there. She was seeing the full, breathtaking scope of his journey from entitled to empathetic, and she realized her feelings for him ran far deeper than she had ever allowed herself to admit. As her father slowly began to stabilize, a new reality set in. The medical bills were astronomical, and the long-term care he would need was daunting. Sophia was facing the prospect of dropping out of college, of putting her own dreams on hold, indefinitely to work and manage his recovery. She tried to hide the stress from Joseph, but he saw the weight behind her eyes. He knew that, even with his help in the hospital, a much larger crisis was looming. One evening he sat down with her in the bleak hospital cafeteria. He had made a call not to his father's accountants to simply make the problem go away with a wire transfer, but to his father himself. He explained the situation, and then he laid out his decision. He was officially requesting a leave of absence from being the heir. He told his father he would not be returning to the estate or to the business anytime soon. He was staying here with Sophia for as long as it took. This was the ultimate choice. It was a conscious decision to walk away from the legacy, even if only temporarily, to help one person rebuild their life. It wasn't about a grand gesture, it was a practical commitment. He told Sophia he would get a job in town as a landscaper, a barista, whatever it took. They would tackle the bills together. He would help her set up a system for her father's care so she could finish her degree online. He was offering a partnership. He was choosing her, and the life of meaning she represented, over the life of image he was born into. This decision solidified everything. It was the final, irrefutable proof of his gardener transformation. The man who once couldn't fathom a life without limitless funds was now willing to live on a modest paycheck to support the woman he loved. This was love beyond status in its purest form. It wasn't about him rescuing the damsel in distress, it was about two people facing life's hardships. As a team, he was finally living the lessons from the earth. You don't just plant a seed and walk away, you tend to it, you nurture it, you protect it through the storms. Sophia was overwhelmed, not by the offer of financial help, but by the depth of his commitment. He was willing to put her future ahead of his own inheritance. He wasn't just a visitor in her life anymore, he wanted to help her build a new one. The billionaire's son, humbled, had found something more valuable than any fortune, a reason to be a better man. And so, a new chapter began. Far from the manicured lawns of the estate and the glittering towers of the city, Joseph Maurice, the heir apparent, got a job at a local nursery. He spent his days hauling bags of mulch and advising customers on the best soil for their azaleas. He used the knowledge Sophia had given him, the lessons from the earth, to earn a steady, humble paycheck. He found a small apartment for them near the hospital, and they built a life together, one day at a time. The man who once lived for the flash of paparazzi cameras now found joy in the quiet evenings spent with Sophia studying for her exams or just talking. The public scandal fallout that had started his journey seemed like a story from another person's life. He had been so obsessed with his image, with the perception of his legacy. Now he was building a real one, rooted not in wealth, but in action, love, and unwavering support. His legacy, redefined, was happening right here, in this small town. In these simple moments, his journey was a testament to the power of humility through hardship. He had to be stripped of everything he thought defined him to discover who he truly was. The dirt, the sweat, the frustration, it had all been a crucible, forging a man of substance from a boy of privilege. The spoiled heir redemption was not about reclaiming his spot at the top of the social ladder, but about realizing that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall entirely. He was, at last, authentic. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a deep well of empathy. His life now had meaning because it was connected to something, and someone, outside of himself. He had truly gone from riches to roots, and in those roots, he found a stability and happiness that his wealth could never provide. He was living proof of healing through simplicity. The story of Joseph and Sophia became a quiet legend. It wasn't about a billionaire saving a poor girl. It was about a grounded girl saving a lost boy. It was about the cook's daughter twist being the most important turn in a young man's life, showing that true status comes from character, not birthright. The heir who was once defined by what he had was now defined by what he gave. He was rooted, he was loved, and for the first time in his life, he was truly free. What a powerful journey. From a public scandal fallout that exposed a life of empty excess to a quiet, meaningful existence rooted in love and humility. Joseph's story is a profound reminder that our true value is never tied to our status or our bank account. The spoiled heir redemption wasn't about getting his old life back, it was about earning a new one lesson from the earth at a time. His legacy redefined came not from a business deal, but from a choice to love and to serve. But now, we want to hear from you. What part of this transformation from arrogance to authenticity resonated with you the most? Was it the initial humility through hardship, the powerful cook's daughter twist, or his final choice to walk away from it all to support Sophia? Drop a comment below and tell us what impacted you. Did you expect this ending, or were you hoping for a different desfecho for their story? If this story about finding love beyond status touched your heart, do us a favor and hit that like button, it really helps the channel grow. And if you know someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to change, share this video with them. Finally, to make sure you don't miss our next story, be sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications. We have so many more journeys of transformation to share with you, and we wouldn't want you to miss a single one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.